The Greek Revolution of 1821 was an event which has fed the bulletins and mobilized the European collective imagination both during the events and long afterwards, having the newspapers and different other high circulation publications continue to reproduce these images throughout Europe. Probably one of the most complete narrations of the Greek Revolution and its characters, and definitely the most vivid as well as the most idealized, was that of its iconography. Well before the invention of photography and of modern reporting, engravers and painters stood out in the iconography of the events and in the portraiture of those men who, at the end, did a unique narration, that of the Greek Revolution and the foundation of the new Greek state. The rich iconography produced can be classified in a few big categories, each one with its own subdivisions. In the first category, we have the characters of the struggle, meaning those of the public opinion, the tales of the eyewitnesses, as well as the philhellenes who were on the battlefields together with the Greeks themselves, acknowledged as protagonists, as the main personalities, as the key factors of the Greek struggle. We have Canaris, Karaiskakis, Bishop Germanos from Patras, the two Kounduriotis, the Kolokotronis, mainly Theodore and Geneos, the Botseris, notably Notis and Marcos, Nikitas Turkophagos, and many others. Besides the faces of the Greek protagonists, we find, although less frequently, those of the Ottoman counterparty, like for example Omer Vrionis. The second category of images includes the events of the struggle, meaning the moments which were, according to the judgment of the persons of that time, or the protagonists themselves, important and crucial for the final result of the revolution, or at least so significant to touch the collective imagination. These scenes are, for example, the fire of the Turkish flagship in 1822, the death of Marcos Botsaris in 1825, the proclamation of the revolution by Bishop Germanos of Patras, the exodus from Missolonghi in 1826, the naval battle of Navarino in 1827, or other previous events like the sacrifice of the women of Suli in 1803, the massacre of the Gardikiotes in 1812, the exodus of the Greeks after the sale of Parga to Ali Pasha by the British in 1818. The third category of images includes imaginary scenes of the struggle and of anonymous faces of the fighters, like the youngster in the trenches alongside older comrades who teach him the art of war. The Greek fighter with his typical dressing, the fustanella facing his own flag, recognizable from the cross, and surrounded by wounded comrades. Or the ferocious, mustachioed Greek warrior who slaughters a Turk recognizable from a braid on a shaved head. All above categories, which after all are not completely impervious one from another, contributes in a subtle way to a unique narration. That the Greek Revolution started before it burst in 1821, thanks to events like the one of Souli in 1803, which was essentially a conflict within the Ottoman Empire, or those of Gardiki and Parga. These were events that did not concern the rebellion as such. That the revolutionary event was guided by specific persons who constitute its pantheon, like Ypsilantis, Bishop Παλαιών Πατρών Γερμανός, the Koundouriotis, Plapoutas, the Kolokotronis, the Botsaris, Bouboulina, the captains Miaoulis and Sartouris, and many others. It is evident that in this type of narration, the internal conflicts disappear, as well as the stalemates, the disputes between factions and other contradictions, or, on the contrary, the faction preferences can be discerned. That the struggle was characterized since its beginning and exclusively by the heroism of young and older people, women and men, with a fearless gaze in front of death. Peaceful, determined, and passionate gazes defying death, like those of the wounded under the flag. It is a Christian fight, as in many images it is the cross of the Greek flag which dominates, while the fight is proclaimed by the hieratic figure of a bishop. This illustrated story obeys to a specific iconological schematization, which makes the identification of the various characters comprehensible, like the beard of Bishop Germanos of Patras, the moustache of the fighters, the fez or the felt headgear of the islanders, the fustanella and the embroidered vest of the Greeks, the turban of the Ottomans, the braid and the shaved head of Asians, and especially the flag with the cross of the Greeks and the standard with the crescent of the Ottoman. The whole composes a unique historical tale, and at the same time it feeds the collective imaginary of those persons who perceived from a distance the events of the revolution, idealizing both the events and the faces of the protagonists. In any case, they have contributed to give a certain image of the revolution, which remained solid up to our days.